We are all still in preseason form. Welcome to From Center Ice. My name is Courtney. The Blackhawks had 2 preseason games this past weekend. One went very well. The other one went, kind of the opposite of that. And unfortunately, the game that went not so well was the one that featured more of the Blackhawks' big guys. Say it's preseason, say whatever you will, but it was rather disheartening to watch either way. And the one that went very well was not on TV and featured a lot of prospects. I did learn afterward that the Blues were actually streaming the game, so I could have watched it, but yes, we are all still in preseason form. So let's go back to Friday night's game, the game that was actually on TV. That was the Blackhawks against the Blues, much like Saturday. Here is the lineup that they went with. On line number 1, we had Alex DeBrincat, Tyler Johnson, and Patrick Kane. Line 2, we had Brandon Hagel, Jonathan Toews, and Lucas Reichel. Line 3, we had Alex Nylander, Ryan Carpenter, and Dylan Strome. Line number 4, we had Jakob Poor, Reese Johnson, and Dmitry Osipov. Again, who is now a forward instead of a defenseman, apparently. On defense, pairing number 1 was Jake McCabe and Seth Jones. Pairing number 2 was Caleb Jones and Calvin DeHaan. And pairing 3 was Nolan Allen and Ian Mitchell. In goal, we had Marc-Andre Fleury and Colin Delia. They split the game. Fleury played about 33 minutes. Colin Delia took over and played the rest of the game. And with that lineup, you will understand why I say that the loss was disheartening, because they lost 6-3. I know, it's only preseason. These guys are mostly trying not to get hurt, but it'd be nice to see them show up a little bit, especially guys who are new to the team. And some of them did, but some of them very much did not. But I will give you the goal scorers, and the first goal scorer for the Chicago Blackhawks in this Friday night game was very exciting because it was Alex DeBrincat, and it was Alex DeBrincat on the power play. Finally! And that puck went in and out of the net so fast the officials were saying no goal on the ice, but looking back at it on video, that definitely hit the back bar, popped out. Alex DeBrincat's goal on the power play. Unfortunately, that only cut the Blues' lead in half because at that point they were up 2-0. But, you know, details. The second goal for the Chicago Blackhawks was scored by our new defenseman Jones. No, not Seth, his brother. Caleb Jones. And that came the shift immediately after Seth was on the ice and got completely clowned in both the offensive zone and the defensive zone. His brother hopped on, went down, scored a goal immediately. It was poetry. I'm trying very hard to watch this game in particular without my previous bias coming through. I didn't like the Seth Jones move. I really didn't like the Seth Jones contract. But what we saw from him on Friday didn't really instill a lot of confidence in my soul about the move. Yes, preseason. I know. But there were a lot of mistakes that were made. A lot of him jumping up and then nobody covering him, so there were guys flying the other way with nobody defending them. Jake McCabe had to defend a 3-on-1 at one point because Seth Jones just got lost in the neutral zone. Thankfully, Marc-Andre Fleury made a big save. No harm done. Remember when I said it would be very funny if Caleb turned out to be the better Jones brother in this whole ordeal? Well, so far he has been. I really like being right, but sometimes I very much do not enjoy being right. This would be one of those cases. But on the other hand, Caleb Jones is definitely making an argument for him to stay in the lineup and be in the lineup on opening night against the Colorado Avalanche. The Hawks have a very packed blue line with a lot of prospects who are looking to make that next jump and stay in the NHL. Wyatt Kalynuk seemed like he had that shoe in to be that guy, but the way he played in that first preseason game compared to how Caleb Jones has played so far, I'd put Caleb in instead. I know it was only one game. We need to see more from Wyatt Kalynuk. I'm sure he will get time in these last 3 preseason games that Blackhawks have this week. Maybe he will show that was a one-off and he does deserve that roster spot, but right now I'm gonna say it goes to Caleb. And his D partner really didn't look bad either, that being Calvin DeHaan. We learned before that game that he had been playing the last half of last season with a fractured leg, which I'm very, very tired of guys playing through injuries. I get it. I know that they don't want to get off the ice, give up their spot. They want to be out there, help the team win. But if you are skating on a fractured leg, how helpful are you really being? Especially when we all know how helpful he really was not being on the ice. So sacrificing your long-term health to play through an injury when you're not helping the team out on the ice, I don't get it. But he had the offseason to recover. He had the last part of last season to recover because he was scratched for the last few games there. He came into Friday night's game and he actually looked fairly decent. So I hope we see more of that from him going forward. You never want to root against a guy on your team, but it was very easy to point out his mistakes last season. Maybe he's turned it around this year with the offseason to recover. The third and final goal for the Chicago Blackhawks on Friday night was scored by another guy who is looking to cement his spot on this roster, and that was Ryan Carpenter. He had a very active game on Friday against St. Louis, and he topped that off by scoring a goal, so good for him. Now that we have the goal scorers out of the way, let's talk about some numbers. Starting with shots on goal. The Blackhawks were outshot on Friday by a total of 40-27. For those of you keeping track at home, that's not good, especially with the amount of firepower that we had in the lineup in that game. You certainly want to see more shots or limiting the other team's shots. 40 shots against, that's a lot. We all know that Marc-Andre Fleury is a very good goaltender. He is the reigning Vezina Trophy winner. I mean, he's very good, but facing 40 shots a night is not going to be an easy task for anybody, so they need to work on that. But when it comes to face-offs, the Blackhawks won 63% of them. That is good. Special teams! Both the Hawks and the Blues went 1 for 3 on the power play, so each team successfully killed off 2 penalties. That's pretty good from a penalty kill standpoint. Of course, you always want to score more on the power play, so going 1 for 3, it's not the worst thing in the world. You'd like to see more than that, especially with not scoring on the power play in the game before it, but at least they got 1. If you are a person that cares about hit totals during a game, the Hawks were out-hit 34-32. There's not a huge difference there. Surprisingly, usually the Hawks get out-hit by a lot. But they did have Reese Johnson and Dmitry Osipov in the lineup, and they were just kind of running around throwing hits all over the place, and so was Tyler Johnson. Not only was he winning faceoffs, but he was physically engaged in this game as well, and he looked very good as a center between DeBrincat and Kane. He was moving his feet. He was kind of all over the ice. It was interesting to see. I didn't really know what we would get from him centering those 2 guys, especially in his first game here, but I want to see more of it, and I liked what I saw in that first game. The Taves, Hagel, Reichel line couldn't really get anything going in this game. I was excited to see it, hoping that Reichel could show off some more of his skill since he'd have some more time and space to do so. But we didn't really see a whole lot from those guys, but we didn't really see a lot from the team as a whole, to be fair. The third line of Nylander, Carpenter, and Strome did make themselves noticeable a few times throughout the game. I'd say Ryan Carpenter was probably driving that line. The other 2 still leave a lot to be desired. And for a fourth line, that line of Poor, Johnson, and Osipov was very effective. Both Reese Johnson and Dmitry Osipov got into fights in the first period. You could argue who won the fight when it was Johnson's, but Osipov definitely won his, and he seemed like he let up a little bit, so he didn't injure the other guy too badly. That is what you get when you take on Dmitry Osipov. If you watched the Rockford Ice Hogs, you would know that. When it comes to defense, I already talked about how Seth Jones left a lot to be desired from that first game. Jake McCabe looked great. I don't think that knee surgery is going to be a problem at all. DeHaan and Caleb Jones looked just fine. And for Nolan Allen and Ian Mitchell, they were also fine. It was Allen's first NHL game, be it preseason, but he looked alright. There are going to be rookie mistakes. He's not NHL ready yet, but it's not like he was a huge liability out there, so I'd say that's pretty good for the kid. And in net, Marc-Andre Fleury, he did come up with some pretty big saves. The goals that he gave up, it's preseason. One of the goals came off of his own turnover. It's gonna happen. We basically had the most chaotic goalie duo in net that night with Marc-Andre Fleury and Colin Delia. They are both full of chaos. When they are on their game, they make that chaos work for them. Colin Delia had to come up with some massive saves in that game. He gave up 3 goals on 22 shots, but that certainly does not tell the story of his game from Friday night, and I feel like that kind of is the same thing that happened to him last season as well. He was just under fire most of the time he was in net, and despite the amount of goals he gave up, he did look fairly solid. Although I guess you could say that about all 3 Blackhawks goaltenders last season, seeing as this team gave up a lot of chances. In Saturday night's game, the one that I didn't watch, Malcolm Subban was in net. He only allowed 1 goal. The Blackhawks won 5-1. The first goal of the game for the Blackhawks was scored by Henrik Borgstrom. The second goal of of the game for the Blackhawks was scored by Colton Doc. So all of the brothers of the big guys are scoring, but not the big guys themselves. The third goal was scored by Mackenzie Entwistle. The fourth was scored by Mike Hardman. And the fifth and final goal was scored by the goal scorer himself, Dominic Kubalik. That one was assisted by Kirby Doc, so he got an assist. Too bad he didn't get an assist on his brother's goal. That would have been very cool, but what are you gonna do? In that game, they were also outshot. This time, the shot total was 32 for the Blues compared to 22 for the Blackhawks. The NHL app seems to think that nobody won a face-off all game because the percentage is 0-0. That's what you get when the games are not on TV, I guess. But apparently, the Blackhawks went 0 for 5 on the power play, while the Blues went 0 for 3. Apparently, power play goals are just going to be very hard to come by this year. Hopefully, that's also the case for all of the Blackhawks opponents and not just for the Blackhawks themselves. It was a very interesting weekend for Blackhawks hockey, but now it is Monday. There is another game tonight. They are in Detroit. I just looked and they do have a projected lineup, so here is what they are supposedly rolling with against the Red Wings tonight. We have a first line of Alex DeBrincat, Tyler Johnson, and Patrick Kane, so they are keeping that line together. Jeremy Colleton must have also liked what he saw, just like I did. We have a second line of Dominic Kubalik, Jonathan Taves, and Philip Kurashev. We have a third line of Mike Hardman, Henrik Borgstrom, and Ryan Carpenter. And we have a fourth line of Brandon Hagel, Adam Gaudette, and Mackenzie Entwistle. On defense, we have Jake McCabe and Seth Jones. The second pairing is Calvin DeHaan and Connor Murphy. And the third pairing is Caleb Jones and Jacob Galvis. And Tracy Myers reported that Marc-Andre Fleury will be getting the entire game tonight. So we've got another interesting lineup. This one is a good combination of mostly veteran players who will make the team with a couple of rookies thrown in. Who are you most excited to watch tonight? Please let me know in those comments down below. I guess I will tell you who I am most interested in watching tonight. That will be Marc-Andre Fleury, Seth Jones, and Henrik Borgstrom. But that is all from me in this video. If you would like to hear more from me or from Center Ice, you can head on over to FromCenterIce.com. You can find links to all of the things over there. There will be a preview for tonight's game up that you can read. You can also find that on our Twitter account, and all of the links to our social media pages are in the description for you. Other than that, thank you so very much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it, and I will catch you all after tonight's game. Bye, guys.